Hi everyone, my name's Tristan Huff and I'm an IT advisor here at Mertech. Today I wanted to film this quick video to explain how you can use Power Automate and OpenAI to start automating tasks at work. So let's get started. So in this demo we're going to go through a common use case we have here at Mertech, which is classification of cases. So it can be quite painful from an engineer point of view to have to go through and classify every case they receive each day. We've got a sample case here, which hasn't been classified, and we're just going to go through the process of looking at how we've been able to automate this task with Power Automate and OpenAI. So within our sample case, we've got three fields that we're interested in populating automatically. So we've got the case type, the case subject, and the case priority. They're all really important fields in terms of how we manage priorities for cases, so how we know which case to work on next, our service level agreements, our reporting for our customer, and they also enable us to route cases through to the right engineer automatically. So this sample case has a couple of pre-existing phone calls on it. So these could be calls, emails, comments, and these are the requests that have come through from the customer. So we can see they're after a new user account. We can see we've got a title for a case, and that all exists already on the case. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to jump through into the flow, and we'll just talk about how this data gets used, because as part of this flow, we capture this information. So any of the phone calls, any of the portal comments, we feed all of that through into OpenAI, which is part of Azure using Power Automate. And then we capture that information and automatically classify these cases. So I'm just going to jump through into the flow itself. So this flow is within Power Automate. Power Automate is available from Microsoft as part of the Power Platform. And we'll just have a look at what this flow is actually doing. So to start off with, when we're sending a request through to OpenAI, we need to send two key pieces of information: a system chat message and a user chat message. Our system chat message sets the context. So what do we actually want it to do and what do we want it to return? So as part of our system, we're telling it that it's a triage bot. We want it to go through and classify these cases. We're giving it all of the context it needs to be able to do that. We're telling it how we prioritize cases. So what's our standard? What metrics do we use to work out if a server is offline? That should be a high priority. But if it's just a general inquiry or a new account, someone being onboarded or offboarded, that's probably a low priority. So we're giving it this context so it understands how we would normally classify our cases. We're telling it how we would normally set types for our cases. So what do the different types mean? When would we normally see these types being used? And for our case subjects, they're a lot longer. So there's a big long list of them, and we're also giving it the GUID, or the identification number for the subject, to make this a little bit easier in the flow. For different subjects where it might be harder for it to understand, we've also incorporated some additional comments. So if there's additional products that might fit into that classification, we're giving it some guidance as part of that as well. And then at the end of this system message, we're telling it what do we actually want it to return. So we don't want a big long paragraph. All we want is either high, medium, or low for the priority. For the type, all we want is just the single word. And then for the subject, all we want it to return is just the ID number for the subject. We don't need to know the rest of the text. We just want the ID. So the first thing we do as part of this flow is we grab the case within Dynamics. So this is all within Power Platform and within Dataverse. We grab that, we grab all of the emails, phone calls, portal comments, and notes that are on that case. And then we go through all of those and we add them into a variable. So it's just a big long piece of text, which is going to be our user message, which just has, this is just an example for a phone call, the subject of the call, the description, and when it was created. The created date can be important for it to have context of something might have already been resolved, it might have been reported. but it can work out that context based off when that record was actually created. The next thing we're doing is we're then feeding that information. So we've got our system message and our user message. We're feeding that through into the OpenAI model within Azure. This all exists within our specific Microsoft tenant. So this isn't the public model. This is our own, private model. And we feed that information through, and we're telling it to return the results back once it's been through and analysed that. Once we have that information back from the model, and that process is very fast, we then go through and update the case. So we're just looking at a priority, for example. If the model returned a priority of low, we're going to update the case and set the case to low. And we do the same thing for the type and for the subject. As part of our process, we also check to see if the priority is already set. So if it is set, we're not going to update it. We'll rely on the engineer having preset that because they've already analysed that case, and we won't overwrite that on the engineer. And then finally, at the end of the flow, we update the case. We add a note onto the case, and we let the engineer know that the case has been classified by AI and also what particular results were returned and when it was run. So what I'm going to do now, I'm quickly just going to start this flow on that case, and we'll jump across and we'll see how it ran. So this has just been run. So we can see that these fields have now been completed on the case type, the subject, and the priority have all been set. So this has all happened automatically in the background. This is the note that I mentioned. So the flow has automatically added this note onto the case. This tells the engineers that yes, it has been processed by AI. Also the model that we used, what was returned, and when it ran, so the engineers can see that. You can see they did a pretty good job of working out that yes, this was a request because it was a new user account. Subject was new account, which is what was in the title and also in the comments. And the priority was low. So it's been able to look at things like the user isn't starting for 2 weeks and work out that yes, this is probably just a low priority case. So 2 important things as part of all of this that we haven't really addressed yet. So security and cost. So from the security side, because we're not using a public ChatGPT or OpenAI model, we're using a model that exists within our Azure subscription. This is treated as a private model. So none of the information that we send out to this model goes out to OpenAI, is used to train, is used for any other quality control purposes or anything like that. So all of this data that we send out and this data from the case is all private. None of it goes out into the public cloud. From a cost point of view, so how much does this actually cost to run? So I've got this is within the Azure portal and within the AI Foundry. So on average, this is just a sample environment, our cases take just under 3,000 tokens. So AI is measured in tokens, or at least Azure measures it in tokens. And I think of a token as a word or even a piece of a word that is used to measure the size of the request. So the longer your request that you send through, the more words, the more it will cost. The more you ask for it to return, the more that will cost, and that's all priced separately. But our requests, because we're not sending a huge amount of information through, are pretty reasonable. And we can see some of the graphs and charts of different requests that have been sent through over time. In terms of pricing though, this particular example, we're using GPT 4.1 mini. With what we're doing here, we'll be able to also do that with Nano. So it's a slightly smaller, quicker model at a lower cost. So the way the pricing works, and this is in Australia, in Australian dollars, These numbers are based on million tokens. So we can see the pricing is per million. For our particular example, when we look at 3,000 tokens that are being sent through, that's zero point 0.2 of a cent approximately per request. So if we were to look at this particular case classification and our flow and what it might cost to run that, for this, from an OpenAI point of view and an Azure point of view, 500 cases is approximately a dollar. So once you add all of those up, all of those tokens up, every 500 cases is approximately $1. If we were using the nano model, and we would get very similar because our requests are purely classification requests, our responses should be very similar, if not exactly the same, with the nano model. If we were using that, it would be 2,000 cases per dollar. So from a daily, if we were to look at daily rates, we might get 2,000 cases a day. Even if that took an engineer 30 seconds per case, that's still over an hour and a half a day that they might take. The cost of doing that with AI is about 50 cents. So you're looking at an hour and a half that an engineer is doing on admin tasks where they should be spending that with a customer, as opposed to 50 cents a day from an AI perspective. It's easy to then scale that out. If it was 2,000 cases a day or 20,000 cases a day, the flow and the automation still works. From this particular example, though, this can apply to a range of different situations. If we were to look at processing emails in a shared mailbox, instead of using a case, if this was grabbing emails out of the mailbox, working out, well, who needs to potentially respond to that? Are there different members in the team that have access to that shared mailbox? Or do we want AI, if we can give it access to our knowledge base articles and get it to pre-write the response to the customer? All of those different situations. If we were looking at leads coming into the sales team, do we want to be able to use some of these automations to classify our leads, potentially gather additional information from different sources? The possibilities are endless. It really comes down to what are staff doing that doesn't really add a huge amount of value. So what admin time are they wasting where they could be doing productive work? Thank you for watching. We're here to help. So if you have any questions, please send an email to our account management team, which is am@myrt.ec. Thanks again and take care.